Hello, I'm Laura Johnson, and I'm one of the founding members of the Career Experts Group, which is a consortium of master career practitioners. And we share one mission, and that is to help guide and support individuals at all stages in their career journeys, from new college graduates to the C-suite executive level. And each month we publish an information-packed newsletter called Your Career, Your Future, where we provide the latest career hiring trends, insights, tips, tricks to help you find your next job or climb the next rung in your career or make the most of your current position. So our November newsletter is focused on career development. And to help us today identify ways we can broaden our visibility, expand our networks, and remain agile in today's environment, I'm really excited to be talking to Jacqueline Peros of JMP Branding in New York City. She is also a founding member of Career Experts Group and has been a joy for me to work with for the last couple of years and finally meet at the consortium that we had, the symposium that we had together. And Jackie is also one of the very few in the world master personal branding strategists. Jackie helps early career professionals in the tech industry confidently show up and stand out in their dream careers. So welcome, Jackie, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so happy to be here, and it's just an honor to be interviewed by you. And it was a ton of fun at the symposium, and it is always great to, we're talking about networking today, and it was just amazing to finally meet so many of my colleagues that I respect at that symposium in person. We're finally able to do that. So I'm happy to be here and have this really important conversation about career progression and planning.
Awesome. And you are just a wonderful, not only personal branding, but what goes along with that, the image and, how you present yourself. And you're just you're a walking advertisement for how well you do your job. And
I adore you. Thank you. That's very kind.
So today I wanted to start with talking to you about how we communicate our value proposition, not only to our employers in our current positions, but also the industry and beyond, to gain more visibility in our brand, to our brand.
It's such a great question, Laura, particularly in today's economic climate. We have rising inflation, and what's going on in the crypto market is super challenging. And we're seeing the tech industry experience widespread layoffs. And they haven't really gone through that in quite some time. So you're seeing companies, more recently, Twitter and Netflix, and you've got Lyft, Vimeo, and Microsoft to a certain extent, experiencing these layoffs. And so, for me, I agree wholeheartedly that gaining visibility inside your organization is critical, but it's even more important now to gain visibility outside of the industry, right? So becoming credible and gaining visibility outside of your organization just helps you to be better prepared in this economic climate. And so I'll go through what I'd like to do, just go through a couple of, actionable tips so that our listeners aren't overwhelmed by where do I start? What do I do? How do I do it? When do I start doing it, right? And so it's really important to start to think about how you can expand your value proposition and incorporate additional skills into that value proposition so you become more visible to the industry as a whole. And so I think one of the best ways to do that, this is one of my tips, is to earn additional certifications, earn additional professional certifications. And so I'm going to talk specifically about the tech industry, but if you look at what are the top certifications, what are those certifications that are in demand, you'll see cybersecurity, artificial intelligence certifications, big data, right? Analyzing swaths, very large swaths of information for, industries such as the government and hospitality, healthcare. Being able to analyze data and make it digestible for companies is another certification that is in demand for not only this year, but also into 2023. And also cloud certifications are another big one, right? So looking at skills that you want to further develop to round out your offering, right, is super important. And then the second tip I would say is communicate your expertise by signing up to present, be a public speaker at maybe an industry conference or an event, right? And if you're the type of person that scares you right now, then get your feet wet in perhaps signing up for a panel discussion, right? So you're not up on stage by yourself, you're with other colleagues, but you're able to share your unique perspective, right? So having the ability to be able to present your area of expertise at an industry event or a conference really helps to expand your network, your visibility, right? So don't shy away from those types of events. And again, I think starting small with a panel is always great, right? Or perhaps you have a great voice and you want to be on a podcast. Search out for someone, an influencer in the industry, and collaborate on a project and say, hey, I really love your podcast, and I think I could really add value here with my unique expertise. So that's another way that you can expand your visibility, because that tech influencer has a much broader universe of people that you could become visible to. So that's just another way. And then I think my last tip that I think gets overlooked a lot, unless you're in the C-suite, is consider becoming a board member, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector. Maybe there's a nonprofit that is near and dear to you that you would like to get involved in. That's just such a great way to network, and it's a great way to gain visibility outside of your current employer, right? And one thing I want to note is there was a recent study by Korn Ferry, and I found this really interesting. It said 79% of first-time board members were not C-level when they obtained their first board seat. So I don't want anyone to be deterred by going after a board seat because they are not at that level yet, because it's a really great way to round out your value proposition and to help guide the direction that the industry is going in. That's really powerful to put on your resume, or be able to articulate that to a potential new employer.
That is a great point. 79%. Wow. I mean, because you do tend to think boards are only for those very senior people.
Yeah.
So
and I think people get deterred by that. And it's interesting. I have a very good friend of mine that when, I'm from the tech industry, we became good friends, and she works at a big tech company still. And she has a passion of art and jewelry. And she became a board member of this beautiful jewelry brand that wanted to scale their business by going online. And she was able to obtain a board seat with this company because of the fact that she came from tech and they wanted her expertise, right? So think of ways outside of your current industry that maybe speaks to a passion of yours, right? That you can bring together with what you're doing, your skill set. There's always ways to bring, and we, Laura, you and I are both, master certified branding strategists. So we know that there is always a way to bring in your interests, your passions into what you do, right? And so my former colleague, now friend, is on this board helping to steer them into this scalable online business because of her tech background. And she loves it because she just loves working with jewelry. And she's got that, she has that passion for it.
Oh, that's a great point. Great point. Wonderful. And speaking of networking, talk about the importance of networking, both to identify internal and also external opportunities. And especially, as you said earlier, with the economy going in the direction it's going in and the layoffs we're starting to see, how can that help us prepare for that potential?
Yeah, I think that networking is one of the most important strategies in career planning and progression. And I feel that with a little effort and energy that you put into it, it always has such a big return, right? And I tell my clients that you should be networking all along, right, in your career. Everything from, if you're graduating, college, make sure you stay in touch with those, those employers that you had, even as a part-time worker, right? Your professors, any associations that you belong to at college, right? Even at that level, always making sure that you're networking so that we're not in a position if, there is a layoff, we're in this, economy that that's real and it's happening, that you reach out to your network after not having any engagement with them to ask for a favor, right? So I always I always try and guide my clients to let them know when be intentional with your networking, right? Just always look at it from being of service, right? Instead of asking for something. And so, there was a LinkedIn study recently that they shared. 79% of professionals it was agree that networking is critical to career progression, but only 48% do it consistently.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that stat, the first thing you could do to set yourself apart is to really keep consistently reaching out to your network, right? Nurture your network. I like to say not only nurture your network, but network your network, right? And so it's just one of those things that's super valuable. And depending on how you work, you might want to carve out time, 5 to 10 minutes a day to reach out to your network and say, hey, I saw that blog post or I saw that LinkedIn post. I thought it was great. Or this piece of information, say if you're working in the same industry, hey, did you see that trend that's happening? What do you think about it? Engage with them on a regular basis. Or perhaps, daily doesn't work for you and you want to carve out an hour, right? Whatever is going to work for your schedule, your style, figure that out. But always nurture that network. And because it does have a huge return in your career. And, one of the things that I found super interesting, as you know, I teach a personal branding strategist course through career thought leaders. And one of the things that I found really interesting, and I learned through teaching this program, is that there are two types of networks. And this was identified by a network scientist named Ron Burt. And through his studies, he identified that you could have an open network or a closed network. And a closed network is where you have one singular pocket of contact. So for me, if I was operating in a closed network, it would be, I would only have contacts, I would only have career branding strategy contacts, and that's it. If I'm operating in an open network, I would have a very large, diverse group of contacts. It would be career branding strategist. It would consist of, I'm also a certified image consultant, so my image colleagues would be in there. Any associations that I belong to, career thought leaders, our group, the career experts group, and previous employers and previous colleagues, right? And through his studies, he said the best predictor of career success is to have an open network. And I thought that was really interesting. And so really the goal is to strive to have an open network. Why? Because it not only increases the opportunity for diversity of thoughts and ideas, but it also gives you additional career opportunities because you become more visible to additional communities, right? So I thought that was really interesting in identifying those two different networks. So and I think a couple of actionable tips for our listeners would be, one, like I said earlier, carve out time to really nurture that network your network, right? Always think about ways in which you can expand that network outside of your industry, right? Because for me, when I look at the tech industry, it is the foundation to all other industries. So having that open network really provides it opens your eyes to other opportunities outside of what you're currently doing, right? And then the other thing, attend industry conferences, whether it's in person or virtual, right? More and more networking is happening in person, which is fantastic. Like our symposium last year, the Career Thought Leaders Symposium, was in person. That was amazing. And we had known each other prior to that virtually, but having that experience of meeting in person, you really get to understand someone's brand and their value proposition and how they operate by having, that 360 view of them, right? How they speak, how they present themselves, what they wear, all of that, fun stuff. So, industry conferences and meetups are always great. And they're happening more frequently in person, which is awesome. And then, identify tech influencers or identify influencers in whatever industry you're currently working in, and see if you can do some sort of, collaboration with them where you can really share your expertise, so you can become not only visible, but credible, right, to a larger universe of people. So those are kind of some quick tips.
Yeah, those are
for
great
networking.
Tips. I think you're right. A lot of people don't think that they should be looking outside of their narrow industry, and they make that mistake of thinking people outside of my industry aren't going to know who I can connect to, or they're not going to know about my industry. But that's really is a mistake that we really do have to look beyond. And your point about tech kind of touching all of the different areas in a company is really key. Like HR touches all those different areas as well. There are a few parts of the organization that do that. So remember,
and it's interesting because I became a special advisory board member for a nonprofit company, and I was doing pro bono work for them, and they had their board, but their board consisted of just a few industries. I think it was the financial industry and hospitality, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been one other one. And so they were really interested in different perspectives. And so they put together this special advisory board group and asked me to be a part of it so that I could share my tech perspective. And so and they loved the fact that I thought of it in, a different way, in that it was really tech is the foundation for all other industries. So if you were operating in a healthcare industry and you were preparing, say, underrepresented groups to be prepared to work in the healthcare industry, then they need to be familiar and not afraid of looking at the tech industry, because all of the medical records, all of that is going online. If I had doctor appointments, my yearly physical, my daughter's physicals, everything is being confirmed online. Texts, getting texts, like you can fill out your forms prior to coming here online. So it's that mind shift that needs to happen, in that, tech to me it really fuels every other industry, and you have to be open to working in that type of industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points. And just though you're talking a lot about, being open, having that kind of open mindset. We talk a lot about being able to quickly pivot or being agile. And so that's my third question to you, is that how important is that in today's environment, having that open kind of, can you talk more about being agile and what that means?
So, I am a planner at heart. So I have lists all the time. And so that's how I operate, right? So it's really interesting that I ended up in the tech industry, right? Because tech is all about being agile. We make decisions really quickly. But, I just had a love for learning something new. And so I ended up in the tech industry, right? But I think, I caution people, it's great to have a plan, 100%. You need to have a plan, but don't be so, rigid in that you can't see past being flexible and open to change, right? And so if you look at the definition of being agile, it is, having the ability to move quickly and efficiently, right? And so, how does that translate into the workplace, right? And so it really suggests that you need to be, or should have, the ability to do things with an open mind and an open heart, and do it in a quick fashion, do it, with an open mind, but make sure that you're doing it in a way that you are working autonomously, right? So like, I always look at being in the tech space is being successful was, to me, being able to do anything, anytime with autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because I didn't have the luxury of, in the tech space, you wore multiple hats, right? And so things changed really quickly. And so you have to make decisions, on your own. And in the tech space, you were allowed to, well, at least the company that I worked for, we were allowed to do that. And that really fed into my entrepreneurial side of me. And so, I think it's important for people, particularly in tech, to be able to know that you have to be agile and be able to move really quickly. So how do you do that, right? What's my advice would be to first gain career clarity. What is it that you want to be doing in the next few years, whether it's 5 years, sometimes 5 is too far out for people. What do you want to really be doing in the next couple of years to have impact, right? Because I think, if anything, what COVID has taught us is that we want to have impact in the world. We want to have positive impact. So, what does that look like in your career? What does that, look like? Also, what makes you feel fulfilled? What is it that you don't want to do? Because I think just as important it is for you to figure out what you do want to do, I think it's equally important to figure out what is it that you don't want to do. And what work gives you energy? And, as you know, Laura, these are things that we go through with our clients when we go through the personal branding process to uncover that brand. And the reason we do that is because at the end of the process, we gain clarity. And when you gain that clarity, if we are thrust into an unfortunate situation in our career or a setback, we aren't as stressed because we have the foundation of what we ultimately want to do. So it makes pivoting easier, right? Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I just got laid off, and you didn't have a plan in place, right? So if you do have a plan, that's fantastic. And you deserve to honor that stress if you are, laid off, or if you have a setback in your career. But that you don't get mired in the stress and the frustration, and it doesn't cloud your ability to get up and continue to move forward, because you have that clarity and you can make informed decisions in your career, right? I mean, career paths are no longer really linear. And so if you think of it in those terms and you work on that agile mindset, it really helps to give you the ability to stay true to what you ultimately want to do in your career, and not get caught up in the list mindset, which is what I've had. I used to do my whole career, right? And then I finally said, okay, I don't, I had a certain situation in my life come up, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? And so I had to throw away the list and really dig deep into what I really wanted to do and what was going to energize me and what impact I wanted to have in the world, in my career.
And that's so important to really know yourself well enough to be able to do that, because I think they say too, a lot of people, most people don't first have a career in the same profession they got their degree in, and then a lot of people will switch careers in their life. But if they know, like you're talking about, the personal brand piece of it, who am I really, and what floats my boat, taking time to really do that is such a key piece of advice.
Yeah, don't rush the process, right? Really understand what your core skills are. You have natural skills, right? And so identifying what they are, and maybe you want to further develop them, right? So again, going back to, expanding your value proposition, tap into that and see what else, I know friends that, became amazing coders that just one day said, it was during COVID, and they said, I want to learn how to code. And so they learned how to code and they love it. And they are going down a different path now. So, which is interesting. So just be creative and identify the things that you think, you want to try, right? Or some of those skills that, you have that you want to further develop, and some that you just kind of want to put to the side and say, I'm kind of done with that part. I want to highlight this skill because it energizes me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You've given us some great actionable tips today, and I really I appreciate your time today, and thank you for sharing all of this information and sharing your time with us and your expertise. I've really enjoyed our talk today.
Thank you, Laura. It's always a pleasure exchanging ideas with you and our perspectives. So thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and I hope these tips are easy enough that our listeners can just start taking action, right?
Well, thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Laura. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.